Hello everybody, and welcome to the December 26, 2018 edition of the Ephraim Josine Show. I am your host, Ephraim Josine. And our first bit of news, the government has still been shut down over border security, again because Donald Trump is so intelligent, he realizes that shutting the government down will mean that 54,000 Border Patrol workers will have to work without pay. Makes a lot of sense. Anyway, Donald said that he will not reopen the government until he gets funding for his border wall, which officially makes it clear that he's responsible after he blamed the other side after he said he'd take credit for it. This whole thing makes absolutely no sense. But, again, can we just talk about how childish this is? There was a resolution on your desk, and it was your job to sign as the president to keep the government open. And you just refused to because it contained funding for everything except your border wall. The border wall that is needlessly expensive. And, if anything, it won't actually decrease illegal immigration. We've been over this before. And mind you, I'm not against, not signing a budget, even if it will shut down the government, if there is something you don't agree with in it. However, when it's over the wall, it just makes you look wrong because the wall is a stupid idea. This isn't obvious to everyone. Really? Anyway, 2020 is only 2 years away. So it's time that we start seriously thinking about who the Democratic Party is going to run. And by that I mean going to Wikipedia, looking at who's already running, and crying. Anyway, so I decided I'd spend some time on today's show talking about the potential candidates and the already running candidates. Of course, there are the individuals who have formally expressed interest or are exploring a candidacy as we speak. One of these women, or one of these people, in case you're curious, is a woman named Marina Williamson, who writes spiritual books that I'm sure appeal to someone. I'm not sure who, though. In case you're wondering, she has held absolutely zero elected offices, although she did run once on a platform of spiritual. If she gets into debates, I just imagine she'll be talking about spirituality the whole time, and it will be quite funny. Then there's Julian Castro, no relation to Fidel Castro, although they'll probably claim there is, so dude, change your last name now. He was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development for about half of Obama's second term, actually less than that, quite frankly, after being the mayor of San Antonio for about 3 years, and a member of the San Antonio City Council. He released a campaign ad where he talked about what a working class man he is, and his backstory, and almost no policy, because, if you cannot tell, Julian Castro is not a very substantive person. He did try and talk like Obama, though, and that's really all that matters. Of course, there are other candidates who have announced but have never held elected office. The most popular of them are entrepreneur Andrew Yang, and before you make fun of that idea, remember that we have a businessman as president right now, so someone who actually is good at business would help. But Andrew Yang, I think, is a far left loon, honestly. He believes in ideas like universal basic income, which is completely unsustainable and would require, I think he said, a 10% national sales tax. So your money would just be eaten up by the sales tax. And not only that, but that'd be a very good excuse for employers to not pay their employees a good wage. Because who cares? The government's taking care of it anyway. And because here's what's going to happen. You're going to implement that. Wages will go down because the business will have an excuse for wages to go down. Then you're going to have to cut welfare because the Republicans will use that as an excuse to cut welfare. Then you can't raise the standard because that will cost jobs. You're giving a huge, huge political advantage to your enemy and you're not even realizing it, Andrew. You're going to get overwhelming Republican support because they're not stupid. They come pretty close sometimes, but they're not stupid. They're usually just evil. For that matter, he also believes the government should have an agency that tells people whether or not the news they were getting is legitimate. This is just awful. When you have, just a decade ago, neoconservative liars pushing us into war, and today neoconservative liars pushing us into war, do you really think they aren't going to crack down on independent journalists? I mean, they may go after InfoWars, but every time they go after something like, I don't know, actual mistakes, places like Addicting Info make, or there's another one, or it's like someone at National Wiki makes. You know, they're going to have those places under a microscope. Meanwhile, Fox will be able to run, and NBC and MSNBC will be allowed to run these giant lie stories, and no one will ever notice. They'll never call them out, because those serve the establishment. So I think that's more naive than anything else. But there are two main candidates who have held elected office before, Richard Ojeda and John Delaney. And to be fair, there's a lot good about Delaney, since we'll start with him. Most notably the fact that he sponsored the Open Our Democracy Act, as well as the Medical Leave for Disabled Veterans Act, something I didn't even realize needed an act, but thank you, John Delaney, for actually looking out for people. However, he is still a moderate, at least that's how he describes himself. For instance, he's regarded as tough on crime, which usually when a politician says that, it means I lock up nonviolent drug offenders, but have not done much to lock up actual, white-collar criminals. Although, to be fair, that's bias against Delaney. Because he actually has supported the legalization of some drugs, most notably marijuana. So I don't think he's bad in that area, but I'd recommend distancing himself from those. Delaney also supports term limits, which leads me to the question, then when are you leaving office? I'm sorry, but being a Democrat and being in favor of term limits is not very smart when you consider that term limits are often used as a tool against Democrats. Why do you think the Tea Party brought it into a national discussion? Why do you think Newt Gingrich nearly passed them? Lastly, there's Richard Ojeda, the state senator from West Virginia, who ran for Congress and unfortunately did not succeed. However, that doesn't mean he's still not a really good candidate. He's pro-choice, he's in favor of single-payer. He's talked about putting body cameras on lobbyists in the past, which I think is great. He's pro-gun ownership, so he's not giving into that distraction of an issue. He gave the best response to Donald's wall I've ever seen, which is, give me 5 minutes and a shovel and I'll find a way to get under it. I'm going to be honest. He's the one that, out of all the candidates right now, has my support. So I do think he would be a positive influence to the race, and is just far left enough to the point where I can feel comfortable supporting him without worrying he's literally Joseph Stalin. To be clear, I don't think Yang is Stalin, but I think he comes pretty close sometimes. Anyway, join me next time where I talk about the speculative candidates, which basically means I make fun of Beto O'Rourke.